I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
The Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
It's better to be 1-0 in the ACC than 0-1. And NC State's men's basketball team was close to being 0-1 in a road game at Boston College on Saturday. Instead, Wolfpack pulls out an 84-78 win over the Eagles on the road to begin the season at 1-0 in league play. Scott Wood, Wolfpack great, joining me here on Law of the Wolf. And I thought of you on Saturday watching the end of regulation in particular to this game. Does that scare you at all?
A little bit, that you would think that long ago to be playing.
Well, we've had conversations about this team and what we want to see out of this team and what they're going to need to do to be successful.
Yeah.
And the game was tied at the near the end of regulation. NC State needed a basket. DJ Burns got the ball. And I thought, aha! Either Kevin listens to the Law of the Wolf, or he's just a smart guy who knows what he's doing, because I felt like we saw this situation against BYU where they would get a little panicked. They did let the game get away from them. There were some leadership gaps there where I didn't see that in this game. I felt like there was a concerted effort, specifically at the end of regulation, to make sure that DJ Burns was involved in the set, involved in the play, and to make sure everything that kind of went off of him. So that's why, in the best possible way, I was thinking of you.
Well, I appreciate that. But I think that is just NC State and how they're put together. I don't think they did a great job of getting him the ball more often in the Ole Miss game. And
the Ole Miss game was like a...
And I think that you saw the results of it. He's a playmaker for you. He doesn't necessarily bring up the ball or come off a pick and roll and throw the pass.
Right.
But he gets so much attention. So you got to give him a post touch. Now, the one gripe I will have, if I had a gripe about the game, you got to find more unique ways to get it to him. You know, they kind of went that Casey cut baseline, set that little pin down action, and they just throw it to him in the post. So I would do a little bit more creative job of just having, you know, more sets to be able to get it to him down in the post, as opposed to just running that same set. Especially, they did it 3 times in a row. It was a turnover, bucket, and I want to say he got maybe a shot blocked. But again, I would just more unique ways to get it to him down there.
Look at those minutes that he played. I know it was an overtime game, but 37 minutes season high for DJ Burns in this game. He ends up taking 19 shots, no complaints there. Well, 2 free throws, maybe a complaint there, but 17 points. He did foul out in this game. But look, I think it's fairly obvious that NC State's still trying to figure out who they are. And anytime you add as many new players as they have,
yeah,
and big 3 in this game in overtime from Casey Morsell, that's what you're looking for. The games, though, that were played that I thought might have been the best sign you want to see, particularly after the performance against Ole Miss, the way this team was constructed was for DJ Horne and for Jaden Taylor to be the top guards, to be the ones who kind of were the ball handling instigators, the ones who you're going to turn to and lean on. Not in the same way, obviously, as Jarkel Joyner and Terquavion Smith last year. Like, everyone's kind of got a square that this is a different group. But you did bring in those guys specifically to get you some buckets. Cannot complain with the way that they performed in this game. And really, Taylor, I thought, was a big difference maker in this game.
Yeah, and I think defensively, too, the one thing that I've been really surprised with Jaden Taylor so far in the season is, you know, when you're talking with other coaches, maybe former Butler coaches, one of the things that doesn't really get brought up is he's a really good defender. You know, on-ball defending, you know, they kind of made that adjustment. I think it was the second or third game this season where he's guarding the primary ball handler or the point guard bringing the ball up, and he's hounding him. He's doing a really good job. I think he's more probably a volume scorer as opposed to DJ Horne. I think DJ Horne does a really good job of getting to his spots, shoots it at a high clip, but they're both bringing something really good to the team. And I think that's something they're going to need, especially DJ's going to be in foul trouble. You know, he's going to stick his hands in the cookie jar one too many times, and he's going to have to take a rest. So how can they find ways to score the basketball when he's not on the court? That's what they got to continue to figure out.
To your point, Taylor's got 4 steals in this game. Nice stat line for him. 18 points, 7 boards, which I think is important, particularly because DJ doesn't exactly rebound his position the way that you would prefer him to rebound his position. The 4 steals, and then DJ Horn played 39 minutes, 40 for Jaden, 39 for DJ Horn. Again, good signs for me. 21 points, and then the 5 assists for DJ. So you're seeing a little bit of that playmaking side that maybe that nobody definitely didn't see against Ole Miss. Middlebrooks was the only one on the planet against Ole Miss. So more important for me is, and I get that it's early in the season, but when you have a disappointing effort like that, and you have a disappointing performance like that, you want to see a team respond. Yeah. And I get maybe you don't think Boston College is a great team. I get, traditionally Boston College, since South Skinner, we don't think of it as like an important game. And ultimately, who really knows? But more so the reaction to, hey, you can't play a certain way and expect to have a positive experience. I think that's the biggest takeaway for Kevin, looking at how they responded to the Ole Miss loss.
Yeah, and again, I don't know if the statistics would show it, but Conte Forum, I'm not even sure if that's what they still call it.
I think it is. Yeah. I love going up there. That's my favorite trip in the league.
It's not my favorite trip in the league. So I'm gonna take the opposite end of that. It's cold, it's dreary.
It's not Syracuse.
They're typically
Syracuse is dreary.
I agree, but I also only went to Syracuse once, so I didn't get too much experience with it. But it's hard to get up to play. You get there and there's no fan base really there. There's not a big student section. It's just hard to get up to play. And so for them to come out, go into overtime, continue the same energy throughout, after, like you mentioned, not playing very well against Ole Miss and just laying a complete goose egg, that shows a lot of character for the team. So, I think they still got a lot to learn. Coach Keats is still trying to figure out this roster. But again, like I said from the beginning, I still think they do have some good pieces to put together a really, really good season. But we still got a lot to figure out.
All right. Speaking of figuring things out, I want to talk about the 4 position, and we're going to get to that. But first, Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, Hayes Lancaster. Listen, if you don't already know, huge supporter of NC State athletics, huge supporter of this program. This program doesn't happen without Hayes, the OG. So do yourself a favor. Take care of your number one investment. That's your home, right? Listen, I've had it all. Ants, bugs, termites. The latest thing has been the termite protection. And you might think, termites, I'll just roll the dice and gamble. Don't. It will cost you money in the long run. It will definitely cost you money. So do yourself a favor. Go to bugsbite.com. You'll see all kinds of coupons and ways to save, because Hayes doesn't believe in contracts, but he does believe in saving you money. So go to bugsbite.com. And, this is, about the real estate business, Scott. And when you get a group that has more than 250 agents, like Hometown Realty does, that suggests to me they know what they're doing. And they have 6 locations from here to the coast. Again, more than 250 agents, more than 60% of their business is in new construction. So, I think the way that and we'll talk more about the rates, but I think the way that the market's going to go, knock on wood for everyone in this room, that you're going to see an uptick, especially when the calendar comes, the election comes. All of those things are big factors. You want to get ahead of that process. Best way to do is get the help of the experts at Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. Buy, sell, calculate. Yes, they got the mortgage calculator right there on Hometown Realty. So it's myhtr.com. And of course, you're going to close on the house. You're going to need some help. That's where Whitaker and Hamer, Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer, they've got you covered in all legal matters. Maybe you're like me. Maybe you got a stray, errant, illegal passing ticket in downtown Raleigh. Well, Whitaker and Hamer took care of that for me. Maybe you want to sell a business. Maybe you have some family law issues. These are all things that Whitaker and Hamer can handle. Go to the world's greatest URL. It is a WH.lawyer. So I'm looking at this, and we've talked about this Boston College game, and I'm thinking, man, I should probably give a little love to Mo Diarra, because 18 rebounds, sir. Yeah. Speaking of not rebounding your position, well, here's the opposite. And I think, Kevin, this is the one spot that I feel like he's still trying to figure out. Do you play Diarra with Burns? Middlebrooks has the great game against Ole Miss. I saw what he's doing here. He's rewarding Ben with the start at Boston College. Got no problems with that. 1 minute for Parker, I thought, okay, unusual.
Yeah.
Particularly because I do believe that Parker is the best athlete on the team. Taylor's up there, but I think Parker is probably the best athlete on the team. So unusual. I don't know what was going on behind the scenes there, but I think Kevin's still trying to figure that 4 position out and what kind of works best, obviously, with DJ, since DJ is the most important piece on the chessboard.
Yeah, I think they're all just very unique. I think they're going to kind of each bring a different skill set to the game, and I think a lot of it's going to be very depending on matchups.
Mm-hmm.
I think Mo Diarra struggles at times against kind of the more athletic, style games.
Okay. He's 6'10", 215. They list him at 215.
But hear me out.
He's skinny, right?
But the games that they've really wanted to get up and down, I feel like Parker has played phenomenally.
Okay.
I feel like that meets his style more. And then on top of it, when you need to bang, rebound, and there's possibly another big involved, or there's a big that may give DJ issues guarding, Ben Middlebrooks can take that, and Diarra can take that. So I feel like they kind of each bring something a little bit more unique. And again, I think just they all bring energy, which is what you want first and foremost. And they got to be able to rebound. Like you mentioned, DJ's not an elite level rebounder. So you got to have someone that cleans it up. You also got to have somebody that can guard an elite level big, because you don't want DJ getting foul trouble. I think, Diarra had a big block last night on the big fella. He's
Post. Yeah. That's a tough
towards the end.
That's a nice little piece of coaching, because of post is a difficult matchup for DJ, and to ask him to try to guard him. And I know he fouled out of the game, but he was on the floor when they needed him at the end of regulation there. So that's tough, man. I think you're right. It's a mix and match. It's the hard part is keeping Parker's mental state in the right spot. When you're young like that, you remember, you played a lot as a true freshman. Like, you were on the floor the whole time, but
yeah. And I just think it's the personality of kids nowadays. They want minutes, and they want minutes now. But I still think he's going to get a lot of minutes. They're going to be shuffling that. And let's be clear, DJ had 38 minutes. What was it? Something crazy.
37.
He's not going to play that many minutes each and every night. Now, they're going to need him probably for that many, but you got to give him spells as well, so that he's effective coming down the stretch to be able to, whether it's pass, score, to kind of close out some ball games. So those guys are all going to get minutes. It's just, again, the matchups that are presented for NC State and how they're going to utilize them.
Yeah, Parker's 6'6", lists him at 205. I think he's the best athlete on the team. Like, that's, but to your point, you're not going to use him to guard 7-foot Quentin Post.
Yeah.
He had 16 minutes against Ole Miss. I think everybody struggled against Ole Miss. Again, I understood why Middlebrooks was given the start against Boston College, because he performed well against Ole Miss. And I think they need all three of them. Like, I don't think this is a situation where you sit here and go, oh, we're not going to play these other two.
Yeah.
I think you need all three of them. It's just kind of.
Well, and I think the nice part is, outside of Middlebrooks, Diarra has shown he can space the court.
Yeah.
Parker's shown he can space the court. So I think they can kind of, if they even wanted to, they could go a Diarra, Parker at the 3 and play with size. I think they could also go Diarra at the 5, Parker at the 4, and go a little bit more athletic. So I think they have some options because those two space the floor. But again, I just think it's just going to come down to the matchup.
So NC State takes on Maryland Eastern Shore. This is the annual game at Reynolds. You did get a chance to play a few games in Reynolds.
Couple, yeah.
Okay. What were your particular? You're a lighting person. You're a backdrop person. You're a ball person. You're very particular about all of your settings. What was your experience in Reynolds like? And let me go to the Ken Palms. I'll pull it up just so we can feel good about what you did.
I went 4 for 4 in my first preseason game ever in Reynolds. So I always liked Reynolds.
You played in it before it was renovated. You guys,
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I never got the
lighting was not great.
And that's so like when my dad, when he was at Western, played
Against State?
Against State at
That's
Reynolds.
cool.
And I think he went like 2 for 5 from the free throw line. And to this day, he'll talk about, I just hated the backdrop of how it looked.
Right.
But there's something about it that there's extra excitement. The fans are extra giddy.
Yeah.
Because it's just so much history in that building. And I think
I was going to say, you grew up in Indiana, and yes, you were recruited by Monty Tao. So Monty obviously is a connection to the greatest of days for NC State. But I don't think you were like some sort of NC State historian before you got here.
No, but I mean, that's the nice part about Monty is he gives you the background. He's almost like a historian. He's like, he gives me all the connections between Indiana to NC State.
Case. Yeah.
And it's kind of actually really looking into it. It's unbelievable, the actual connections to it. But, you know, he tells us all the stuff, gives us the backgrounds. And then I think the really cool part is, you know, them unveiling the David Thompson statue for the game is just going to be even more added excitement. But I think that's one of the things that, you know, this staff has to do a really good job of too, that I enjoyed is, you know, kind of educating them on the history. I saw where they came out with something on social media where they were showing David Thompson highlights and they're kind of giving their reactions. So, you know, just kind of going back and kind of giving that history, because there's a lot of really, really good NC State history here that, you know, some of these kids got to learn and understand. And I think a little bit of it is taken away because we never had the opportunity to play at Reynolds. So trying to, you know, educate them as much as they can.
Yeah, just to take a minute. I know people listening to this are NC State fans, but if they're younger and they don't realize, David Thompson, there was no 3-point line. Okay, number one. Number two, they wouldn't let him dunk. Okay, and number three, he was not eligible to play as a freshman.
Yeah,
it wasn't him; it was an NCAA rule. And yet, his scoring records stood at NC State until Rodney Monroe and the 3-point line came along in the early 90s. Okay, so that's number one to recognize. I've watched exactly one basketball game with David Thompson. It was the 74 semifinal where they beat UCLA.
Yep.
And I watched that game and I thought to myself the whole time, every jumper he's taking is a 3-pointer. Like every time he took a jumper, it was from 20 feet.
Yeah.
So his numbers, and again, if you gave him a 4th year, let alone what we're seeing now with guys in 5 and 6 years, if you gave him a 4th year of eligibility with a 3-point line and the ability to dunk, he is already considered the greatest player in the history of this conference. Okay. By the people who actually watched him and covered him and played against him. He is already that. I'm just telling you, if he had either of those two things, or if he had both of those two things, he would have put up numbers that would have never been touched by anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone. So sometimes it gets a little bit lost in our fuzzy history. You know, like you say, like, what do we know about David Thompson? War 44. He was great.
Yeah.
There's like one picture of him in the arena. That's because, like, for whatever reason, it's the same one of him, you know, reaching back like they.
I wonder what the statue is going to be.
Yeah, I wonder. So, you know, for me, I think there are, and I wasn't here, obviously, I was born in 75, but there are people, and I actually do remember David Thompson playing in the NBA, and obviously he had some issues at the end of his career, and, you know, wasn't the same player that he was. Like Michael Jordan literally invited him to the Hall of Fame, hit Michael Jordan's Hall of Fame induction speech to talk, because that was Michael Jordan's favorite player growing up.
Yeah.
Okay. So for this whole generation of people who worship Michael Jordan worshiped David Thompson. Okay. Now we can have a different conversation of how Michael Jordan didn't end up at the same college as David Thompson. That's for another day, though. Awesome. I am glad that they're honoring. I'm not a big statue person. I don't like them. I'm not a. That's not how I would want to be remembered. Or if I were running NC State, or if I were running a professional team, I wouldn't build statues. I would do other things to kind of try to remember them. That's just me that's just the way that I am, because we've seen too many statues have to come down like 20, 30, 40, 100 years later. I mean,
that's fair, but you have to do something.
Yeah,
for him. The problem is all the naming rights on everything has already been taken, and I get they don't own PNC or anything. He needs to have something named after him. And like you, I didn't grow up in the era that he was playing.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to have Monty there, so I was able to get more information than what probably the everyday person
Yes.
gets.
And don't underplay Monty's role in this. Don't underplay Tommy Burleson's role in all of this. Like, they really had, when we talk about the greatest teams in ACC history, they're on a really, really short list.
Yeah.
Like a really, really short list. Again, there was no shot clock, by the way. That was the other thing. Like,
yeah,
seriously.
He'd score a lot more points if there's a shot clock.
There was a game in the 100s, the greatest game ever played between them and Maryland. There was no shot clock, no 3-point line. It did go to overtime, but I think it was 104, 100. Like, what? How is that even possible? So, I am glad that NC State's doing it. Monty, though, what did they list Monty at? 5'6"?
He's 5'4", probably.
I mean, he's taller than 5'4".
Buddy, I don't think so.
I think so.
I saw him standing next to my wife, and my wife's every bit of 5'5". So, and they were looking each other eye to
eye. But the ultimate point guard, the ultimate leader, they invented the alley-oop.
Yeah.
Monty Tao and David Thompson invented the alley-oop.
Competitor, ultimate competitor.
Oh, yeah. And there's no doubt about that. So we'll have to get Monty on this program. Now that I'm sitting here talking with you, we'll have to get him on and talk a little bit, because you're right. It is something that deserves to be highlighted in NC State's history. I think, I don't know about you, I definitely get some 74 and 83 fatigue when it comes to NC State.
Well, it's what you got to talk about. I mean, we go through the spell of, we haven't had a conference championship since 92, but in all reality, there's so much history, whether it's any sport, that if you actually go back and look at it, that, has had a positive impact on not only the ACC, but NCAA as a whole. Yeah. So,
no, I don't want them to ignore them, and that might come out wrong. I think there are some fans who kind of feel the same way that I do. It's like, it's like last year, obviously, his 40th anniversary, right? Like, that's a thing. But it was like, it's the 37th anniversary. It's like, well, that just seemingly like we come up with a reason. NC State comes up with a reason to kind of celebrate them, and it's like, okay, to your point, there's other parts of their history that they could probably.
Yeah,
I get it. You got to go back a little bit of ways and figure some things out. But it's interesting. And of course, to tie all of this together, Eddie Biedenbach is the assistant coach who recruited David Thompson. Eddie Biedenbach's daughter. I went to school with both of his daughters, and one of them is now married to Rod Brendamore.
Yep.
So every time I see Rod, we talk a little bit about Eddie and talk about Rod's Brooks' son Brooks, man. Because Eddie was a hell of an athlete.
Yeah.
He played all sports, like amazing. So I'm sure he'll be there for the statue and everything else. It's always good to get the crew. Is Monty coming in town tomorrow?
I'm sure he will be. I haven't talked to him since the event that they did.
Because you're doing the game for ESPN.
I am.
Okay.
I am. So it'll be a lot of fun.
Is this your last game?
I got one more after that, St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
At PNC. But it'll be a lot of fun, and it'll be a lot. I'm sure production will be really heavy on DT stats, and honestly, that's one of the more enjoyable parts. They pull some of the craziest statistics that I've never even heard before, but it's just kind of fun to hear.
Absolutely. So they get UMass on Wednesday, 3:45 in Ken Palm. A little bit of a break until next Tuesday. They play Tennessee Martin, 2:58 in Ken Palm. So these are two games that should be layups. Tennessee. We'll obviously talk more about it as we get closer. I've seen now Tennessee play against Carolina, and they lose to Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking back to last year, we saw Tennessee play against Duke. So now this is State's chance to get a look at Rick Barnes and the Volunteers. Really, their last chance also to get a signature win for their NCAA tournament resume. I don't like now. Tennessee's lost 3 games in a row, by the way. They just happen to be to Purdue, Kansas, and Carolina. So I don't think we need to worry about the Volunteers right now.
Well, maybe Justin Gainey will throw us one. How about that?
That's his son playing for them, right?
Yeah.
Oh,
he's coaching there, right?
I know. No. I know Justin. So Justin is a year younger than me. Yes, 1 year younger than me. So his 97 He played every minute of the 1997 ACC tournament. It was amazing. Destined, one of those guys destined to be a coach. Hoping for him that he replaces Rick when Rick's ready to retire at Tennessee. I think there's a real possibility of that. Would love to see Justin get a chance to run his own team, because what he's been able to do, Arizona, I'm thinking specifically, but also App State and some other places. Like he knows how to.
He's at Marquette
but he knows how to go and find players that maybe are a little bit off the beaten path, and obviously didn't have to look too far for his son. But
yeah, that's an easy one.
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward. But that game's in San Antonio. I don't like that. Did you?
Is it for a tournament?
No. It's this one-off that they're playing in San Antonio. I'm trying to remember. Did the Godman did a lot of home and home? I mean, technically, your St. Bonaventure game was played at a neutral site, but that was Rochester. That wasn't.
We did the Jimmy V Classic that was at the
Okay,
Garden.
you played UConn up at the Garden. That feels different than randomly playing Tennessee in San Antonio, because that was the first time State had actually played in the Jimmy V2.
Yeah, I mean that's not a home court advantage for anybody. I'll tell you that.
The Garden,
Texas.
Oh, no.
But I feel like that's just middle of nowhere.
I don't like it. I've already yelled at Kevin about, why are you playing game? To go to Tennessee so they can come here next year. Like,
yeah, I would rather go to Tennessee, but at the end of the day, if you got to get quality wins and you got to schedule some quality opponents, I mean, you take what you can get.
Yeah. What would you like to see out of NC State over these next two games? Now we'll talk again next week, but what would you like to see when you're playing a team like this, who you know you're better than and you should dominate? What do you expect, or what do you want to see out of a team in this situation?
Yeah, I think just kind of how you said it, just dominate. You got to understand that there are always things to work on. You know, maybe you're not very good with your left hand and you're up 20. This is the time to work at it. You know, I also think that it's a good opportunity to get minutes, to see what some of the other guys that have not gotten as many minutes, see what they're kind of can do. You know, Ernest Ross came in, grabbed 2 quick fouls in the Boston College game, went to the bench. He's probably itching for some minutes. Same thing with LJ, Breon. There's a lot of guys on that roster that are really itching to get out there. So it gives them an opportunity to say, you know, let's send a message. Let's send it early, you know, come out with a little bit of intensity and, you know, put them away early so that we can get some of these other guys in there. So then also you don't got to sit there and, you know, worry about any injuries or anything crazy happening towards the end of the game because you left it tight.
All right, I'm going to let you get out of here without any football talk this week, but because I'm going to have Jacey Zembal from Wolfpack Central come on, talk about some of the roster turnover that's happening for NC State football. What did you think, though? They end up playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. They're playing Kansas State. Scott Wood, if you were a senior, would you be playing in this, and you had NFL prospects, would you be playing in this bowl game?
Yes, I would be. Just me personally. I don't know if it makes the most sense for a lot of people, but this is one of the, it just kind of bugs me. It'd be like, how many guys do you see make the NCAA tournament and sit out?
The NCAA tournament?
For basketball?
None.
I don't understand why we're sitting out for these bowl games then. Why is it an option?
I mean, you could technically win the national championship when you play in the NCAA tournament. You can't win the national championship playing in the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
Okay, so then that just tells me any bowl outside of the Big Four doesn't mean anything to me. Why are we playing them?
Right. I would play the bowl games at the beginning of the year, particularly now that the playoff is here next year. Like they need to take a serious look at it.
Or why don't we just make it round robin from the beginning and rank everybody at the beginning of the year and just have 64 teams in and you keep advancing?
I like that.
Like I don't understand. Like that my biggest pet peeve with football is you're going to a bowl and you legitimately want to sit out. I mean, I get there's a lot more risk for injury in football than there's basketball, but I mean, it's still an opportunity to win. It's an opportunity to win 10 games.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit different this year. I was disappointed in the way that NC State approached and played in the Mayo Bowl last year down in Charlotte, especially since it was Maryland. As we talked, a lot of response last week.
And then all these guys transferring.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys leaving. Like, I'll ask you, and maybe you have a different opinion, but I will say that the reason people transfer is to play more. Like, I know there's money, but ultimately you want to play. And if you're not playing at NC State, and Dave's been upfront about this, like he helps people. He says, you know, all of these receivers who are leaving, like.
So my question is, the ones that are leaving, that have dressed out the season or have played for a university, are they transferring and then missing out they're just going to sit out their bowl game after they played the whole year?
I think they give. I mean, I think it depends on their relationship with the team, but I think there are some players who will play in the bowl game even though they're leaving.
Okay, as long as they're playing, I mean, I'm fine with it. But it's like, is Duke's coach did they make a bowl game?
No, he's gone. Yeah, they made a bowl game. Someone else will coach them during the bowl game.
I feel like that's wrong too.
Yeah. Well, he's the coach at Texas A&M now. He's not the coach at Duke anymore.
Good for him. You just left the guys that you've raised high.
I know. That's why, we haven't talked about MJ Morris, but that's why, obviously, in the middle of the season, it's a little bit different. But MJ Morris made a decision that he thought was best for him. Mike Elko made a decision that he thought was best for him. It's kind of part of college sports now.
Well,
there's too much money.
And I just hey, listen, as a fan, don't get mad at the player when the coaches are doing the same thing.
Right.
That's all I'm gonna say.
Right. That's my attitude as well. So, all right. Yeah. Thank you everyone for your comments last week. Again, if you got some, just drop them right there. Subscribe, do all those good things. And Scott, we will we will do this again next week, but we'll have a little break. We'll have a little winter break. Don't worry. But we'll have to talk. We'll talk after the Tennessee game. How about that? Because I know you got a lot going on here. And before I get you out of here, of course, what is the best way for people to find you? Keep in mind, I do not have my glasses on today. So scottwood15.com.
That's correct.
All right, scottwood15.com. You see it on the screen right here. Scott can help you with your mortgage. Mm-hmm. Scott can help you get ready. If you're thinking about buying a home, maybe you have a home, maybe you're trying to figure out, hey, I need to cash out a little refi action. Yeah. I need a little help with that. That could be you. That could be Scottwood15. Go to scottwood15.com. I cannot read the telephone number, so that'll be you're in charge.
765-609-0453. But I'm going to go a different direction.
Okay.
Shout out to Hayes again. So my wife saw a cockroach on the wall.
Okay.
That day, they had somebody out at the house to take care of it.
Oh.
So they've got us already set up. They were that quick. So shout out to Hayes and his team for helping us out.
Yeah. Doesn't get any better. Got to take care of your house.
The best.
And before you get in your house, you need a loan. So again, scottwood15.com. Check them out. Scott, appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
See you next week. And before we talk some football here on Law of the Wolf, I'm worried about your Christmas shopping, and I can help you. Go to homefieldapparel.com. They have unbelievable selection of all NC State stuff. Jackets, hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts, sweatpants, you name it, they've got it. Old school logos, new school logos, they got you covered from A to Z. Use the promo code OG15. Use the promo code OG23 and save 15%. Use that promo code OG23. Save 15%. Get yourself that jacket. Get your dad that jacket. Get your mom that jacket. Get your wife that jacket. Great stuff. It's Homefield Apparel, homefieldapparel.com. And there would not be an NC State podcast without our friends at Breeze Through. We were there at the Breeze Through on Trinity and Edwards Mill after NC State's big win over North Carolina. You'll see us back out there for some other live shows. It was such a success. Can't thank Adam enough for his help, but for all of your gas needs, for all of your snacks, for all of your coffee, for beers, Gatorades, hydration, you name it, they've got it. Hats, unbelievable hats at Breeze Through. Go check them out. More than 17 locations. They got you covered from here all across the state. Wherever you're headed, Breeze Through is there for you. Housekeeping. All right, you could see his face there, Jacey Zembal, Wolfpack Central, Wolfpack Rivals. Joining me here on the Law of the Wolf. JC, before we get into some football talk, I want to make sure I give props to the NC State women's basketball team. They're now 9-0. As my friend Kyle Wiggins likes to point out, they're picked 8th in the ACC. 8th? And they are now number 3 in the country. Obviously, those big wins over UConn and Colorado, boosting their out-of-conference play. The women schedule is still kind of weird to me in the number of games that they play in the league. Their league play will not start until December 31st, but did want to make sure because, and I am going to work on getting Sanaya Rivers on this program because I am fascinated by her story. So for the NC State women basketball fans out there, I'm here for you. I see your comments. I'm with you. I got you. But the football season wrapping up, the regular season's done. NC State closes 9-3. And JC, we talked during the season a little bit about what the position that the roster was in and kind of how it got here. And now we see from your site, I'm going to put the list up here, even though you said there's another one. There have been 18 players leave the program. Now, this includes Jordan Houston. So this would be from the start of the season, right?
Correct. This is a list of the players who have departed since basically Jordan Houston.
Okay.
And it includes Michael Crowell, who's giving up the sport because of injuries, and he has a higher calling, literally. He's going to be a pastor or a minister down the road. But, it's interesting. Like, this has become such a crazy time of the year. And, I asked this to Coach Doran last year. He used to love December. Now he doesn't. When you look at all the players that are trying to transfer into school, well, they have to be into school by mid-semester.
Okay.
So there is a time crunch. There's no negotiating the time crunch. You can't put off the transfer portal to March or June or, whatever. Like, you have to have these kids in school and enrolled.
Okay.
So you have all these players who want to transfer, to a school. You have signing day on December 20th. You have bowl prep and the bowl game itself on December 28th. High school recruits and junior college recruits, same deal. Now, the high school kids, in theory, could go to February, but most don't. They usually sign by December 20th. The junior college kids, who State has offered a boatload of, first year I ever had to do a junior college hot board, which is on the site, because there's over like 13, 15 kids that have been offered.
So what's
and
the
they
advantage?
have to enroll by, most of them, not all of them, but most of them have to enroll for mid-semester too, so that they have a time crunch. And unlike the high school kids, they don't get to go and visit on a Saturday. They're playing their own game for the junior college on a Saturday. And then you throw in the 2 days of state title games, Friday and Saturday at NC State and UNC. And then just to cap the month off, the John Wall Holiday Invitational at Raleigh Broughton for the basketball crew. So, I mean, there's just so much going on in the month of December, more so than ever before.
Okay, I want to get to the JUCO stuff in a second, but first let's go through this list. Not every name, but obviously the ones who stand out to me. CJ Clark is a guy up front on defense, played a lot. Lyndon Cooper was a player who started on the offensive line, notably since the Duke game, went to the bench. There's some public comments there that some could have interpreted as him being blamed for things, and he had some penalty problems. Another name that jumps out at me is Jakeem Harris. I don't know all of his health. And then, I'll be honest with you, JC, I expected these receivers, and there's a lot of them on this list, and Chris Tootle, a tight end, on this list, in part because those guys weren't making plays for NC State, and quite, maybe harshly, as some people, depending on your view of college athletics, like, if you're not going to be good and you're not going to play, I'm sorry, this isn't. Dave went through too much of this at the beginning of the season, playing a Porter Rooks, playing, a Terrell Timmons and an Anthony Smith. And it's like, if you're not going to make plays, you shouldn't be on the field. There shouldn't be some sort of socialism, communism. Hey, just because you're on the team that you get to play. Like, there should be some sort of way. This is how it has to be. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. I mean, I think you and I both predicted there would be house cleaning.
Yeah.
Your own rare. You could do your own jingle, but
right.
We knew that was coming at wide receiver and tight end, and it happened. And wouldn't surprise me if it's not completely done. There could be a couple more wide receivers or tight ends that are still could enter the portal who haven't played at all. So there's that dynamic. I think CJ Clark will definitely be missed. I would make a case that Brandon Cleveland will be a very good starting nose tackle. He'll be a junior next year.
Okay.
He's the backup this year. So I don't know how much of there may not be a major drop off at nose tackle in terms of the starter. what it means, though, is they have to find somebody to be the new Brandon Cleveland as the backup. This happened last year where Corey Durden was the starter, and you had to move Brandon Cleveland from defensive end to nose tackle, so there was a backup behind C.J. Clark. Because C.J. Clark originally was also a defensive end. Jakeem Harris, when he's healthy, is a serviceable college safety. When he's healthy, we know that. That's proven. He's played a lot of football. Obviously, he had a terrible situation where he got hurt, I think 5 plays into the UConn game.
Yeah.
So that was brutal.
Yeah.
I think Terrell Timmons will be good one day. He has all the physical abilities to be good one day. But college football is a here and now business.
Yeah.
So,
to be clear, I'm not being that guy who's like, oh, everybody who leaves a program stinks and everybody who comes in is going to be, an All-American. I look at it, and I think it gets back to something that Dave has said, and I have no reason to not believe what he's telling us. He has conversations with all of these players and basically tells them, like, hey, this is what I think your role is going to be. And if you think, you could play somewhere else and get more playing time somewhere else, I'll help you.
Mm-hmm.
Try to find you maybe you go down a level. Maybe it's a G5, maybe it's a 1AA situation. I don't know. What was the total last year? Basically, you had Devin Leary.
I thought it was around 12 or 13.
Okay,
I looked at it. I studied what happened last year, and basically Devin Leary transferred to Kentucky. He was
and there were some extenuating circumstances, obviously, with Devin.
In terms of, I look at it as most of the guys on the list that you had up are probably going to end up at a group of 5 program.
Okay.
That's my prediction. Most of them are claiming offers on Twitter already from the East Carolinas, the Liberties, the Marshalls, the Georgia States of the world.
And if you're going to play, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not sitting here saying these guys stink, get rid of them. No, I'm saying I think they probably had a real conversation with Dave, and he said, this is where I think your role will be. And if you can go get minutes elsewhere, that's what you should do.
Football. This is the difference between football and basketball. Basketball, you could play for fun. Some of these guys could go to a smaller school and play overseas.
Mm-hmm.
When you're done with college football, typically you're done. Very few get to make the NFL. A very handful will try, whatever, Canadian Football League or the XFL or USFL. We see a few of those guys. But usually when you're done, you're done. And if I was somebody who basically sat the bench for 3 years and I had one shot to finally play at a smaller school, I don't blame the kid.
Yeah.
I mean, unless he has, an academic reason to stay or a girlfriend or, extenuating circumstances. Okay, I get why that guy, I call those kind of guys program guys.
Yeah.
And sometimes we see program guys end up having a niche. Delbert Mims developed into a good short yardage runner this year after not playing a lot. That was his niche. He stuck around and, he filled that role. And you see that happen. Sometimes, though, I look at the list from last year. Demisumo Carnbele, maybe he'll play next year. He was a backup at Kentucky.
Yeah.
So he went
that was the one. Yeah, that was the one where I thought, okay, they really could have used him this year, obviously.
The whole nose tackle discussion we just had is created because the backup nose tackle, Joshua Harris, went to Mississippi, where he was also a backup. I think he had 13 tackles and 12 games or something like that. Nothing crazy. Ben Finley, obviously extenuating circumstances, got a shot to play at Cal.
Yeah.
He's now in the portal again.
This
time I bet he goes to a smaller school where he knows for sure he is going to be the guy. Those are, and then Devin Carter, he was the 5th one to go to a high major. He started at West Virginia. He had the same flashes and the same inconsistencies that he had at NC State. West Virginia was not a dynamic offense. It'll be interesting to see. I'm sure they'll have a career day against UNC in the bowl game, though, because everybody has Devin Carter. I'm sure will light up UNC in that bowl game in Charlotte, right? But then you look at the other guys, the guys who dropped down a level. Really, only one played at their smaller school, and he's really like the least likely of them. You wouldn't even remember him, but there was an offensive lineman named Thornton Gentry from Chapin, South Carolina, who appeared to be like the 3rd string right guard at NC State. He transferred and he went to App State. Now, one thing I do know is that the coaching staffs between NC State and App State are pretty close. They know each other. They communicated with each other. I don't doubt any of that. So I'm sure Appalachian State got some inside info like, hey, give this kid a chance. Next year, he starts the last 7 games of the season at left tackle of all places, en route to their into the Sun Belt title game. So he's the one. But it's really amazing when you look at a lot of the others. Some of them had injuries, I'm sure. I don't doubt any of that. But because some just didn't play much. But a lot of them, they went to their smaller school and they didn't do much at the smaller school either. So I think we see a lot of that, which is why I don't get too worked up about what's happened with NC State's exodus. So
where does State go from here to fill this? I think you made a great point there about having to have a JUCO board for the first time in your 25-year career. I mean, I think it's related to NIL money, right? Like everyone has these dreams of
JUCOs are a great thing because at this time of the year, everybody's concentrated on 4-year transfers.
Right.
B, I don't know if any of them are going to be greedy.
Right.
Most, as Dave Dorn pointed out this year, like they love the perks of going from bus rides and Kansas and Mississippi to all the nice amenities that happens as a player at NC State. They signed 3 last year. 2 of them really contributed in big ways in their roles. Bishop Fitzgerald at safety was big because of all the injuries to guys like Jakeem Harris and others. Red Hibbler became a great pass rusher off the edge. That's a crucial role. He was fine. The third one was Terrente Hinton, who had a little bit of a role, but then kind of got banished after the Duke game when he got beat on the double move by Jalen Calhoun. So he didn't play much at corner after that, mostly special teams. But this is what I see. I think, a number of scholarships right now in the low 70s. Now, State can do different things with the math. They could make a guy an NIL walk-on. We've seen that in the past. They might take a kid who was a walk-on that got a scholarship, and then he goes back to being a walk-on, which is not a nice thing to do, but that's part of big boy college football. But in essence, they have in the low 70s. This is what's new. Usually State tries to sign their high school kids, and there's 93 kids going into when everybody is enrolled in the summer. And then have to pare it down. And usually slowly but surely, kids transfer after spring football. Maybe somebody flunks out academically, and they get to the 85 number. This is like one of the first years where they go into signing day with a boatload of scholarships, which then goes back to a handful of high school kids, a lot of the JUCOs that they're trying to get, and then the portal guys. So, if
they haven't been great in the portal, which is why I was interested in what you said about JUCO. It makes sense if you have holes to fill and you've had more success doing that than you have in the portal. That's something that would make sense to me. But I'm looking at this going, they need a quarterback, which reports on Grayson McCall are interesting. We could talk a little bit about that. You need someone to replace Peyton Wilson. Obviously, you're not going to get Peyton Wilson, but you need someone who's going to lead your defense. I'm not sure they have one of those. Now that could be Jalen Scott, but
Jalen Scott's gone.
Okay, so money wise, you're going to need to buy a linebacker. You're going to need to buy a quarterback. I mean, those are the two. And I don't know what their plan is at running back. I love the promise and some of the potential of Raphael. He showed me something in those last 2 or 3 games. There was a little bit more there. I know probably he was healthy. He's probably part of it. But obviously, you need more than one running back.
So they finished the year with 2 scholarship running backs with Delbert Mims and Kendrick Raphael that were healthy. Yeah. So, they have a very exciting high school player coming in. Jaden Duke Scott just ran for over 300 yards in his Georgia high school playoff game. A fascinating name has entered the portal. I love to call it the ghosts of recruiting pass with Dalen Hollywood Smothers.
Okay. I saw that on the Twitter yesterday. Yeah.
Did not play much at Oklahoma. Yeah. Very good friends with Kevin Concepcion. I'm sure it's a very weird dynamic with some of these 2023 recruits who saw Kevin blow up at NC State while they're redshirting at their own respective schools. Obviously, in the big picture, everybody runs their own race. And if you're good, and you'll eventually get your shot. But Kevin obviously got a shot as a freshman, took advantage of it, while some of these other guys who have entered the portal, might be looking at NC State and like, whoa, look at what they did with some of their freshmen. So it'll be fascinating to see what Hollywood Smothers ends up doing. State was right there for him, Charlotte area kid, and feels a need. He's not the big back who's going to get 20 plus carries and pound between the tackles because he only weighs 181 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But he was very exciting, and even though he is on the smaller side, the dude was a really good on blitz pickup. Like, you don't notice high school kids on blitz pickup very often.
Right.
You did with him. Like, he was one of the rare backs in high school where, he stuck his nose in there. So that, another ghost of recruiting past is Wesley Grimes, who left Wake Forest after 2 years. Raleigh Middlebrooks star. He just got offered again by NC State. It'll be interesting to see what he wants to do. He would fill at least a role, a receiver, to go with Concepcion and Jonathan Paylor. I've been pounding the gavel that they have to get at least 2 tight ends somehow, some way, somewhere. But they're only down to 2 tight ends, and one of them is Javante Vereen, who's essentially a wide receiver playing kind of a quasi tight end, unless they do something where they do keep Isaiah Shirley as a defensive end, converting to tight end at the end of the year. If they keep him permanently at tight end, well, then at least he's one of the tight ends. And could be a very good blocking tight end. And it'll be interesting to see what happens when they actually throw the ball to the tight ends.
Might be an idea.
Yeah. So that, they clearly probably need a cornerback if both Shaheem Battle and Aiden White go pro. They both have a year of eligibility left.
Yeah, those are the JUCO. That's a filler-upper or somebody you don't spend all that much money on.
But I think what you pointed out and what you said in a roundabout way, somebody like Kennedy, who came in from Old Dominion and filled the nickel role superbly, who wasn't a big name. I'm sure he didn't break the bank at all NIL-wise. But you need guys like that.
Yeah.
You need to plug in holes with guys like Kennedy who come in, do their job. Whether it's for 1 year, 2 years, preferably a 2-year eligibility guy. But those are the guys that are gold for an NC State in the portal.
Let's talk a little bit about that quarterback position before we get out of here. And Jacey Zembal, NC State rivals, Wolfpack Central. My guy, appreciate you, man, taking some time for me as always, going and keeping up with all this stuff because I know the way that you do. Grayson McCall has been at Coastal Carolina for a minute, all right, and he's a good player. He did not have a great year this year. He only played in 7 games. I suspect he was banged up. He was banged up some last year too, but he does have another year of eligibility. He did just play for Tim Beck at Coastal Carolina. What do you think of Grayson McCall, and if that's your big ticket item, if that's your Brennan Armstrong this year, if you spend your NIL money on Grayson McCall, would it be the right move for NC State?
Yeah, I've been firmly on Team Grayson McCall for about 3 years now.
Okay.
I was one of those draft nerds who watched Zach Wilson and BYU play that rushed up game against Coastal and McCall in the COVID year.
Yep.
Where they just kind of made the game spur of the moment.
Love it.
Basically showed all athletic directors across the country, like, you all are crying about having things locked in 10 years down the road. Yeah, we just made this happen in a week.
Yep.
And I remember watching McCall play in that game, and I actually thought Zach Wilson was going to be a good NFL quarterback based on that game. But I've always thought, he was a fascinating story because he's from the Charlotte area. He went to Porter Ridge High, I believe, in Indian Trail. He was apparently big rivals with Sam Howell once upon a time. Now, Sam Howell will enter his 3rd year in the NFL while Grayson McCall is entering his 6th year of college next year. So it just shows you how crazy the sport has become. But they had shootouts between Sun Valley and Porter Ridge from all accounts. But what hurt McCall in terms of his recruiting profile is that I guess he ran a wing T. So there weren't a lot of passing opportunities. So he ends up at Coastal Carolina. From everyone who has said anything about the whole Jamie Caldwell and Grayson McCall marriage, it was perfect. Like, they were made for each other with the way they did their offense. And I didn't watch Coastal this year, and I know he was banged up, and that's really been the only nitpick about Grayson McCall over the last several years.
Yeah.
He usually misses a game or two or three because of injuries, because he runs a lot. You look at his carries, he had a lot of carries. He gets hit a lot, and they list him at 215 pounds, but it's amazing how you don't look so big when you get hit by 250 or 270 pound guys. And, obviously Brendan Armstrong got hit a lot this year too. And by the end of the year, he was hurting with his ribs. That is a thing that is an age-old college footballism. You have a running quarterback, you risk getting him hurt. That's why the NFL guys don't run. Plus, they're better hitters. Like very few NFL guys, Cam Newton, Lamar Jackson. But Grayson McCall, man, he makes plays. He's got moxie.
If he's not the answer, is there someone out there that is available to them that would make sense?
They haven't seemed to be linked to another quarterback yet. But it's something I've been following fast. I've been fascinated by the amount of I knew there'd be a lot of quarterbacks. I just didn't know which ones. I mean, Will Howard leaves Kansas State, which became an important thing this month with NC State playing Kansas State. We've reached a point now where Lane Kiffin trolls the other teams recruiting Will Howard by posting pictures of himself in Manhattan, Kansas on Twitter, just to let the other colleges and fan bases know, like, yo, I'm here in Manhattan. This is my guy. So it tells you what the stakes are. Dylan Gabriel, leaving Oklahoma. I look at it as like there's value guys, I don't know if NC State will go after him, but, the Indiana quarterback on a bad team, had like 15 touchdowns and 5 interceptions in over 7-8 games. He wasn't the full-time starter, but it's clear that he made the best of his situation. And he ends up leaving, so there's guys that are like that. Minnesota just got the quarterback from New Hampshire. They believe in him. That always seems to happen. So, people get very excited about the DJ Ungolays and guys that were hyped up in high school, like a Dante Moore from UCLA and
Cam Ward at Washington.
Yeah, Cam Ward at Washington State. I mean, there's some very exciting names. Then there's lower value guys. I wouldn't say lower value, but there's maybe under the mainstream guys like Aiden Childs, who also left Oregon State, who was a true freshman, who everybody believes has a monster future and will have probably at least 3 or 4 years of eligibility if he redshirted. Like, I don't know if he played the 4 games or more, but at least minimum 3 years. And I wouldn't be shocked if NC State ended up getting maybe a young guy that can be developed and then the older guy that plays. It wouldn't shock me if they got 2 guys in the portal, because at some point they have to get caught up with their quarterback numbers. I mean, this goes back to Ben Finley leaving at an inopportune time in the spring. Then it goes back to the previous year where Aaron McLaughlin left at an inopportune time. I mean, there's times to leave, and then there's times not to leave. Like we talked to, Kevin Keats would always get burned because like Blake Harris would leave in October, or Ian Steer would quit the team after 1 game. Well, you can't replace a guy in October or November. So you just used up a precious scholarship. And that's what's kind of happening at the quarterback spot. And then the other dynamic that has to happen over the next, 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, they got to hold on for dear life for their high school kid, Cedric Bailey, who's had an incredible year for Hollywood, Florida, Chaminade, Madonna, who's got like the greatest receiving crew in the history of the high school world. Talk about receivers, both 1 and 2 in the country, his 2 of his targets. And then he has like a young kid who's up and coming. And then the running backs going to UNC. So it's like the dream team of offensive players. But Miami wants to keep them all home, as they should, right?
Right.
So it's going to be fat. One of the biggest storylines going into the next couple of weeks is, who is Miami going to get, and will they swipe NC State's quarterback? Well, then you're just down to Lex Thomas from Wake Forest Heritage, who redshirted this year. So that's why I go back to, at some point you can't be worried about people's feelings. Ben, have you heard about that with quarterbacks and their feelings?
Yes, just a little.
But at some point you have to do what's right for the program, build the room back up, and not worry about, if we bring in this quarterback, it's going to upset that quarterback.
Yeah.
at some point you have to have a good group of guys where, I mean, what if, we saw what happened 2 years ago.
Listen,
this was an injury away from Ethan Rhodes playing against UNC.
Whew. Luckily, Brendan Armstrong was able to gut that one through.
So that's what I find fascinating about the whole quarterback position is, and that could be an ongoing saga all the way up until May or June. I mean, there's going to be some kid that loses the battle in the spring at his school, and he doesn't want to be there anymore, and he puts his name in the portal. That happens every year. Now, what you can have is go and get nicest kid in the world, but you can't get somebody like Jack Chambers who just wasn't ready or wasn't a good fit for what NC State did schematically. And then the Jack Chambers comes in and doesn't do any, isn't a help at all. But they at least have to get somebody who's serviceable, who can be a Tate Rodemaker, right? Man, we've heard that name a lot in the last 48 hours. He's like football god right now.
Well, I'm looking forward to the spring game together. We'll see what happens in this bowl game. Hopefully they'll show up more than they did last year against Maryland. But Jacey Zembal, NC State rivals, Wolfpack Central. Actually, I'll see you at Reynolds tomorrow.
Yeah, big. I don't know if you're going to do the 11:30 unveiling, but then they have the game itself at nighttime.
No, I'll be there for the game.
But yeah, David Thompson and crew will do the unveiling of the statue, and maybe a good segment for the future is who will be the first one to get a statue outside of PNC Arena.
Oh boy. Hopefully no one. I just talked to Scott Wood about
is it even allowed?
Person. I don't believe in him. So
it could be Rod Brindamore.
Maybe.
Right? And someone deserves a statue at some point over the next 10 years.
Pack Pro. Jacey Zembal, appreciate you taking the time, man. And again, Apple, Spotify, Google's, all the places you find your podcast, you find The Law of the Wolf. And right there, of course, subscribe, hit the button there on the YouTubes. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you next week right here on The Law of the Wolf.
It ain't for soft people.